What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer taking a look at this Ursarctic deck profile, and then I'm going to show a little bit of gameplay at the end, just because I've changed up my list a little bit since the first gameplay video. I have not shown the Kashtira engine, so without further ado, let's go ahead. This is the Winged Dragon of Oz smear mode, so of course this card is very, very good. You don't normal summon in this deck at all, or normally you don't, 99.9% of the time. You're never going to. Now, this could also be a kaiju if you feel like your opponent's not going to have 3 monsters, but in my experience, any modern deck is probably going to have 3 monsters on the board, unless you're playing Labyrinth, and I think at that point you just kind of side in other stuff if you're playing against Labyrinth, and it's just not going to work out. Like, if you're blind second against Labyrinth, it's really, really hard, to win. Going into the side, you feel a lot more confident, but this has won me so many games. It just has a bad matchup, against something like Sword Soul, because they usually end on like Baron, so that's kind of wacky. So it's up to you. It's up to your personal preference. I've been running with Stream Mode for a while, but like I said, it could easily just be kaijus. Lava Golem is something that you're definitely going to want almost all the time. Your opponent's going to have at least 2 monsters, and this card's absolutely devastating. With only 2,500 defense too, makes a very big difference because you do have main deck bodies, which are 2,500, which is really cool. Megabilis, I think I say this right. Is that right? Megabilis, but Megabilis and Megapolar both have attack to get over it, which is super important because the battle phase is a big problem for this deck. You don't have big bodies, and they just don't exist outside of popping cards, and that's about it. Popping cards are hoping it's less than 3,000 attack. That's something that the deck definitely needs. Speaking of 2 Megabilis, being able to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard, but it's not a quick effect, really. Now, the effect is special summons a quick effect, but it doesn't go until the next chain, and that's really what prevents this deck from ever having the capability of being something more than just a casual deck. Is you can't chain this to your opponent's like special summon back from the graveyard. You'd have to kind of read that beforehand, and that's very, very difficult to do, especially if your opponent has quick effects in the graveyard. They can just dance around Megabilis, but it is the biggest body, and you want at least 2. It's the high level 8, it's a tuner, and that's the most important thing. This is Ursarctic Megapolar. This is the Spell and Trap Pop. This is a very, very good card. Very good to use. And a lot of the times, right, it doesn't really matter what they are because they're just going to help you go into your resource loop. They're just level 8 tuners, and that's exactly what you need in the deck. There needs to be one that bounces to the hand. That would be like really, really good. That's kind of the next evolution. I talked about this during the last video I made about Ursarctics, but I think really the only thing that really needs to be replaced to make this deck, I think, reach its full potential is this one brings back from graveyard, but this one needs to be a spell and trap, add to hand, not just add back a monster from the graveyard that you just pitched. If you replace that, right, if this becomes a spell and trap or Ursarctic Searcher, and then one of these can be replaced by either a pop or probably more importantly a bounce, if not both of those things, then you're talking about a really decent rogue deck for sure, or a very high-end casual deck. I don't know really where you would place it. And I think once you talk about rogue and casual, you're splitting hairs, but I just think if it has those, I mean, this deck becomes so significantly better. There's just so many times where I've come up against towers or just something that I could not get rid of, like by Book of Mooning it, which is like the best monster, that I just lost because I didn't have an answer to it. There's one in the extra deck, but it's so gimmicky and not very consistent. So, yeah. But anyways, 3 Megatonus. This is the one that's the Book of Moon. Really, really, it depends. Like, if your opponent's playing a Link strategy, this is incredible. Just being able to set your opponent's monster during their turn is great, and then being able to do it again. This incredible resource loop with Polari, where you do it during your opponent's turn, so most likely you're going to have 2 of the materials, especially if you open up Polar, right? You search the Book of Moon, you Book of Moon your opponent, and then you already have the materials for Polari. Polari then searches the field spell during your turn. You can banish a card from your graveyard just to bring back Megatonus again, and then another Book of Moon, and then you get to go into even cooler stuff, which is fantastic. Now this is it's a tiny engine, but it makes a huge difference. Oh my gosh! So Kashtira Unicorn searches, Birth. So what happens is you're going to freely special summon this card, or you get to pitch it, right? This is a level 7 or higher monster, so if you special summon this, you can search this card, which is a great form of interruption, by the way. If your opponent activates a spell, you banish 3 of their cards in the graveyard face down. Amazing. Super, super good. And then Fenrir searches itself, or can search Unicorn. Now, I could just run 3 of these and call it a day, but I don't know. I think it's a very bizarre ratio, 2-2, and then just the 1. because this card can technically be a brick, but you do get to level, normal summon a level 7 monster without tributing, so that can be important if you don't have a pitch. So this card is actually, very, very good in the deck. So many level 7s, so many times you want to go into the synchro, but you don't have the pitch, fodder, and Kashtira Birth kind of, helps fulfill that requirement. But like I said, you can special summon this, search out the field spell. This is a level 7, so if you can just bring out one of your big names, you just synchro summon it, and then when you're done with all your combo, you just bring it back with Birth, right? It special summons from graveyard or banish pile. All of those things are factors, and they're very, very good. And the reason I like to play both is if you have both in your hand, what you end up doing is just pitching one of the big names to bring Fenrir to the graveyard, and then you can just bring that back too. So a lot of the times you're either going to have Unicorn or you're going to have Fenrir. Fenrir's great going second anyways. It's kind of counted as a going second card in my opinion. It's certainly not bad going second, that's for sure. It can help your opponent get over a lot of things. And other than that, like another thing this tiny little engine does for the deck is baits out your opponent's biggest forms of interruption. They think you're playing Kashtira, so they're going to use the Ash Blossoms, which it's just, an extra thing, which is great. And Fenrir's so good too, right? It special summons itself, so you have 11 on the board, and then it searches an extra copy. It searches an extra level 7. So if you open this, you can search out Unicorn, or a lot of the times you're going to search out another copy of Fenrir. Then it can just be used, right? It's a level 7, and it's fuel for your discard fodder. Very great synergy. Very happy with this. A lot of the times I have both of these on the board, so on top of all the Ursarctic stuff that you're doing, which is popping cards like spells and traps, banishing cards from your opponent graveyards, Book of Mooning. This is another engine that helps, supplement a lot of what you're doing. If your opponent has targeting protection, you're kind of screwed in this deck. That's like the only real form of out is targeting. It's good against most decks, and most decks don't have targeting protection, but when you run into them, like a Chaos Max Dragon is like an FTK. You don't really have an out outside of this card, Stellar Wind, and I'll go over that in a moment. But yeah, I'm so happy with the Kashtira engine. It's so, so good. I do run one copy of Mechabilis. There is a card that searches Tune. If you already have some others in your hand, like this card can be like, okay, I don't know. I mean, really, I think you could probably cut this, maybe add another copy of this. It is what it is. I just kind of, you might as well, right? Just being able to have that free search. So many times the level 7s, especially like Mctonus, is just a way to get up the level 7 that you need on the board. McPolar is incredible, especially with, this is the strength of the deck. It goes through this card, and that's why I want this to be a spell and trap searcher, because being able to, like, if your opponent is playing a spell and trap heavy deck, that's great. You can search out, Mega Polar, or your opponent's playing a Link heavy deck that helps you search out, Megatonus, and that's where the peak of this potential for this deck comes. It's just such a great pivot point to play during your opponent's turn. So many times in Yu-Gi-Oh, right, where we play all these going second cards where we want, we have the Lightning Storm, but we wish we had the Book of Moon, and this is the card that like helps you change that and get whatever you need. Because this is a blind going second deck. It doesn't really have plays as of right now until this is a spell and trap searcher. And really even then, I don't think this is ever going to be a going first deck. I mean, it'd be great if the spell and trap searcher existed. It'd make going first a lot better. But I think it's always going to be great going second because you can use the best going second cards in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! With 0 repercussions. And like I talked about Mctonus, you're going to run this at 3. 3 Lightning Storm, 2 Pot of Extravagance. Very good, right? You don't really have an extra deck at all. I mean, you do, but they're all just copies of 3. I've been burned a few times where I banished all copies of my, Polari, and it's like, ugh, I don't really have any plays anymore. Everything goes through Polari, but it is what it is. This card's won me so many more duels than it's ever lost me. That's a big-time fact. Like, you can't run the other pot of cards. I mean, you could run the pot of card that you banish 6 and search the top 6, but you need multiple cards, right? You're burning through your resources really quickly before it becomes overwhelming. You're going to have maybe like 1 card in your hand, if you go through your combos, during your opponent's turn. And really what I mean is like Book of Mooning your opponent. Now, once you get your resource loop up, it's incredible. Like it's very deceptive. Like you only have 1 card in your hand, and it ends up being a lot because you can banish this card as an Ursarctic instead of tributing and all those things. But just that going into turn 1, like your first turn, right? You're blind going second. This card is so much more impactful to get 2 blind cards when most of the time this card is purely a pot of greed. As long as it doesn't banish 3 copies of Polari, really you can make anything work. This is the card Departure that lets you search 2 names, which is great. Ursarctic Drytron, my goodness. I mean, I was so ignorant to this at first, and that's really what was the problem. You know, I was like, I don't know, is it really that worth it? Yes. This card is incredible, right? Fusion summoning using field spells, you're not losing any real advantage at all. You're really, really not. You can banish this card instead of attributing from the hand for Ursarctic effects. This card is absolutely amazing. So that's why you got to run 3 copies of Fafnir. And if you hard open Fafnir, it's really not a bad thing. Well, it's great. That's what you want to do. But if you open up like extra copies, it's good because you always want to keep Big Dipper on the field. Like normally you have Big Dipper on the field and then you banish it for the effect of the fusion. But you know, if you open up an extra copy, that means you can banish another Big Dipper from your deck. It's so good. The card's not great going second, right? Big Dipper only sort of does something, but not really. So it's good to run it too. But you want to see this fusion card as much as possible. So that's why you got to run 3 copies. I wasn't doing that before, and that was my biggest mistake. This is a absolutely necessary, you know, ratio. Maybe you want to run more copies of Ursarctic Drytron, but at the same time, it's terrible going second, right? It takes setup to get there, so you kind of want this to be an ancillary piece, you know, to what you're doing versus hard opening this every single time. You know, it's just you want to see that 1 copy of it, and when you're going first, and that's a really good piece, you know, where Pot of Extravagance comes in. I talked about Kashtira Birth. Talked about the field spell, you know, Fafnir, and I talked about Big Dipper. Okay, so going on to the extra deck, the fusion's fantastic, right? When you special summon a monster, you could add an Ursarctic monster. You can grab one of your banished ones, right? You're always going to be banishing because of the field spell and Polari. Incredible resource loop by itself. I love this card. I wish it didn't have 2,000 attack. That's so weak, but luckily you have Book of Moon to kind of protect it, you know, if you need to. But even if you just get to use it once, you usually get so much advantage. This is Stellar Wind Wolf Freyet. So it gains 300 attack each time a monster effect is activated, while the attack of this card is less than 4,000. Once returned, if this card's attack is 4,000, you can shuffle this card and all monsters your opponent controls into the deck. This is the only out. The Synchro 9 pool is garbage. It's so bad. And this is really the only card worth note. So I think that, I know Ursarctics is kind of the negative Synchro summoning deck, but it would be really good if they made a Synchro 9. I think that's the next evolution, you know, the Spell Trap Searcher, a pop / you know, compulsory evacuation, and the next one is the Synchro 9 that does something. And I think that something is going to be, as stupid as it sounds, maybe just something that attack boost and something that's non-targeting removal. You know, if it's that simple, the deck gets so much better, but you are going to be able to trigger this. This is the best deck by far that you can use this in, right? You're going to be activating at least 2 during your opponent's turn. You know, during your turn, excuse me, once this is out. 2 during your opponent's turn, so you get even closer. And then the rest you kind of rely on your opponent. But you'd be surprised how fast this gets up, especially because you contribute yourself, right, to gaining attack. You're going to get there a lot faster than you might think. Your opponent really just has to activate 2 monster effects. And again, I didn't say this again, but Big Dipper is kind of the same boat, right? It's like, oh, your opponent has a special summon like 7 times, or there has to be 7 special summons before you get to take something. It's really not that bad. Like, you get to special summon like 4 times on your own, so it's your opponent special summoning 3 times. That's nothing in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Your opponent is definitely going to be special summoning a bunch of times as long as they're playing like any normal deck. So I've activated Big Dipper so many more times than I actually thought, and it's won me so many games, and I'll show that in one of these replays coming up. This is the like boss monster type of, you know, card. Your opponent non-leveled monsters, so XYZ and Link monsters, are Audi 5000. That's pretty darn good, but also if your opponent special summons, you get to add an Ursarctic card, so that's kind of cool. If you're having a really big resource loop and you're able to stop your opponent, Departure is a card that you can search. You can search the fusion. That's kind of cool. It's just too slow. A lot of the times, I'd say 80% of the time or 90% of the time, you're going to be searching one of your interruptions, right? You're not going to have the leisure to search a card that you can use only during your turn. You know what I mean? This is Ursarctic Grand Chariot. I kind of took this card for advantage a little bit. I wish this card had 3,000 attack, and it would be significantly better. Excuse me. It'd be significantly better. This card pops 2 when it's summoned, and then if your opponent targets a card on the field, you can tribute a level 7 higher monster to negate it. Yeah, I mean, that's okay. The targeting thing's okay, but it's always, like, the pop effect is very good. And this is Polari. This is, like, the main deck monster, right? You search the field spell, you get the banish, give yourself advantage, helps you go into one of your synchros. It's also good, right? It helps you go into any of these synchros by itself. It's very good resource loop. So that is the deck. Let's go ahead and go over some replays. And I'm going to go over my favorite one that I did first. Kind of flexing, not going to lie. This is against Generator. Such a good... Look how incredible this is. So I can Book of Boon my opponent during the turn if I want to. I can banish a card if I want to. But really, I think I'm just going to sit, right? Especially now that I see Generator. I think Lava Golem's going to be so good. He's going to have 2 forms of interruption during my turn, but that's where Lava Golem comes in. And I get a free special with Unicorn as well. Oh, plus I get Departure. It's like, what really can you ask for here? So he can negate a special summon, but his monsters are not going to be there much longer. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those 2. See you later. Special summon Unicorn. Activate the effect for Birth. Talking about that resource loop. Now I can grab 2 more. I'm going to be able to search pretty much anything that I want. And I can, you know, add back McPolar. Or I can just special summon this out. Eventually I am, you know, going to be able to go through this entire resource loop. Big Dipper from the deck. Then I can special summon. I don't really need the Book of Moon effect. Doesn't really matter. And then I can bring back Unicorn. Ah, it's so good. I mean, it's not great, obviously. When you look at this, it's like, okay. But I don't know. When you look at the context, I have 3, right? 3 counters on this. Only 4 more special summons. And I will be special summoning during my opponent's turn at least once, probably more times. You know, all I need is my opponent special summon just a few more times after that, if not 2. And I've gone through this loop. And plus, through this resource loop I now have Unicorn. So slowly but surely, I'm taking away all of his outs, you know, to my board. And it's really not that slow because, like I said, the only thing that outs us are Synchro monsters and Fusion. So if your opponent isn't playing a lot of those, then you're pretty good, right? Here comes Baron. That card's not an out either. I don't even know really why. Oh, I went for Zeus first because I need this to stay on. This was the only monster in his extra deck that could just crash into it. Like, Zeus wouldn't have been negated, but he could have still at least used it. 2 more, and I get to steal one of his monsters. I got to play this a little bit carefully, so I can go for McBillis, and I think this is going to help me attack over a bunch of these. So if he wants to negate, you know, during my turn, it's going to cost him a lot, and I'm going to go for this last, and he's going to go for Har, which is fine, but Birth lets me bring back every single turn. And then look at this. This has 8. I'm going to go ahead and grab his Har. So the 8s are the tuners, and Polari requires you to, you know, it has to have a level difference of 1. So the Generator monsters are 9. So normally it's 7 and 8, right? Your level 7s and then the 8. But this one was a normal non-tuner 9 and I had an 8. It's still a difference of 1. So that kind of negative synchro summoning is still online, which is so cool. I now have Ursarctic Drytron. Like, this is just kind of crazy, obviously. Big Dipper's best effect, you know, is to be able to banish instead, and the Fusion does that, so really no difference. I'm gonna go ahead and pop these 2. They don't have a better replay that I could possibly use. Like, this is the peak of what this deck can do. So again, if he activates a monster effect, I have pretty good chance here. You know, I get to banish 3 of his cards. I'm pretty sure, you know, there's the one that pitches and brings back from the graveyard. That's not gonna happen. He's going to go for Boss Quest, which is fine. I do have Polari, so I have a way to, you know, pop his card. And there we go. That's his last out. That was the last one. So no synchros that he can go into. Not that he'd have an easy time doing it, but I think he only has 1 boss stage left, and I don't think that the trap does that. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that card, which is going to trigger this, add another one. And even if he did somehow was able to get it back, I do have another Polar during his turn to pop the card, which is fantastic. It's so good. All right, so let's just go through the rest of these. This is against, I believe, Dogmatica. Don't have a way to do anything during his turn, but I do have Lava Golem. It's always a good feeling, you know, especially when your opponent is playing some sort of like combo-based deck. The combo. I think he was supposed to trigger. Oh, okay. He wants to go into the. All right. So these cards are good, and really I have to be kind of careful, right? This is going to bring itself back when a card of his is destroyed, so I'm going to go ahead and, you know, Lava Golem there. I do have the Fusion hard open too, plus the double searcher, and that's always amazing. So I'm going to search a monster of my choice. I'll grab a Mega Polar. You just want to have the big names in rotation, right? You're going to be able to add one back, especially with the Fusion there, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and Book of Boon this. Like I said, 3,000 attack is really hard to get over, other than, you know, the Synchro, which I guess is definitely an option. But normally popping 2 cards isn't enough. I'm like, I hard opened another Big Dipper, and that's fine, right? That's no problem at all, because now I get to keep this, with the counters, and that's obviously very important. So I think I can grab the, make Polar, which is super, super good. I can banish a card from his graveyard. That's the Jet Dragon. That way, I can now finally attack over this that, doesn't come back, and that's very good. He only has one card, so I think he gets to add back with Whitestone, and that's cool and all. No big deal, really. He does have Dark Ruler no more, but I do have McPolar, so, and I think I have 2 ways to tribute, so I have the Field Spell, and I also have Departure, so I'm going to be able to have one form of interruption here. I don't think he actually has anything. I think he ended up scooping, but even if he did have Dark Ruler no more, I actually did have some answers. So I had one decent form of interruption left remaining. Actually 2, so McPolar Search is an interruption, which I can immediately use, right? It's quick effect. And then at that point, I'm up to 6 counters, and if my opponent special summons one more time, I get to steal one of his monsters, which is fantastic. This is against Dogmatica. Such a good opening. I'm going to be able to, if I want to, if I absolutely have to, I can interrupt him during his turn. But yeah, once I see this, I'm thinking, yeah, probably not, but we'll see. I guess it makes sense, right? Dogmatica and Fallen of Albaz. This card I don't really know why he's using, but he goes for Kit, and then he's going to go for Branded Fusion, of course. Nothing really I can do. Fenrir is actually one of the best outs in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That I can think of when it comes to Mirror Jade. Excuse me. So here's Mirror Jade, and then he goes for Fleur. He's going to search, a monster negate. So I got to get a little creative. And like I said, this is where Fenrir really shines, because it's going to be really hard for him, especially if he gets rid of this monster. I get to search Unicorn. I'm going to go to the battle phase, right, or attempt to. It's going to, trigger this. He actually waited. Why wait so long? But I'm going to get rid of this, which is great. And then I can just go for Unicorn. I still have so many plays to go through. It's just so good. I think, yeah, let's see what happens here. So I think he actually ended up banishing. Oh, okay, it was face down. I was going to say, it doesn't Fenrir banish face down, so that his effect does not trigger. None of my monsters are going to be popped during his turn. I thought before the battle phase he would go into it and I would have to get a little more creative, but I don't. And even then I would have had Fenrir on board, so it doesn't really matter. I would have had an extra copy in my hand and I would have been pretty cool with that. But I'm going to start going through his extra deck, right, getting rid of all of his outs, especially for Dogmatica Punishment or whatever it is. Any way to go into Mirror Jade if you didn't have any extra copies to do it. This card isn't actually very good against them because it's a fusion summoning deck, but I just need that resource loop to go through, and that's kind of the most important part. But I can start picking apart his deck a little bit here. I do have a Book of Moon. Oh, I think that I did not. I forgot to click the fusion. It was just literally a misplay. You have to have Mega or Polari on the field to use this, and I went to Synchro Summon. I was like, oh, I don't want to Synchro Summon. There's no way to cancel that action for whatever reason. In this deck, or in this program, but this only has protection against extra deck monsters, so if I just Book of Moon this, there's not much that he can do. Now, he's gonna go for a Fleur, but it's alright, well, these aren't extra deck monsters either, so I'm still gonna get rid of this, and probably in a much better way, right? I think he should have waited for Fenrir, because this is gonna get banished face down. He's gonna go for Albion, the Shrouded Dragon. I don't think that's really gonna do much, but that's going to gain attack, but look, I only have one more counter, so your opponent has to be very careful. I still have Birth. This card's so good. Just being able to bring something back every single turn. And really, if I had extra copies, in this point, I don't know if I do. Well, yeah, I can bring back Fenrir, search Unicorn, and then I can normal summon, which is really fun. Now, he has, again, these things just bring out interruption. It's just an ancillary piece, I always say, it's just an extra little form of interruption versus all the other Ursarctic stuff. So your opponent's going to focus so much on stopping all of these things that they were going to forget that you're actually not even playing Kashtira, or maybe they're actually just forced to. So that's why I love playing this engine. I'm going to banish, I think, just a random card. I don't think there was anything in here worth banishing. I'm just getting bodies on the board at this point, to be able to finish for game. I think I went for 2 copies because it's 3,000 attack. But this, yeah, I actually still get to use the effect. This is a clean steal, and it's forever. I'm going to be able to just, you know, gain attack, which is so funny. I can get over this, which was only that. It had 3,000 attack, but I ended up, you know, Book of Mooning it. Book of Moon's still a good card, or the ability to Book of Moon. And that was enough for game. Let's go over to Runic, and I'll play like one more after this. Unicorn, McPolar, Megabilis. So again, a very good pivot point here. Maybe want to go for the, you know, pop for the field spell. We'll see what ends up happening. Yeah, and I'm just trying to challenging him. Like, you better have the one that negates. Now, he had Ash Blossom, and that's a bit of a bummer for sure. But I'm going to go ahead and banish, you know, at least one, so he can only go for Upstart Goblin. You don't really have anything that's, like, bad to banish. And look at this. He banishes my Fenrir, so if I have a way to get to Unicorn, I'm pretty good. He has 4 cards, but we'll see. Again, I'm challenging him at every single turn. Like, you better have, like, the exact, you know, flashing fire and all these things that you need. And I still have this. I still have Birth, and that's awesome because I can now just bring back Fenrir. And I can search an extra card, refueling my engine here. I'm going to be drawing, like, better and better cards. Go to the battle phase. He's going to go for Slumber. I think that just banishes. That doesn't actually do anything. I'm going to force out the Runic Fountain, and then I'm still going to banish it, so he's not going to really be able to use anything. Going into the extra deck, Baguska is like kind of a clean out, I guess, to this. He can send that back to the extra deck. Oh, that's right. I couldn't activate the effects of this. It's fine. Again, like, I'm using all of his, like, forms of interruption. He goes for Fountain to draw one, but is that even good? You know what I mean? And if he activates the effect of Wings, I'm going to, you know, banish the field spell. And the counters are starting to go up. So if I open just like one monster, then he's in like big trouble. Especially if I just open up one big name. He's so screwed. So through all of those like fountains and everything, nothing really happens. The only card that's bad to banish from the main deck is the Fusion. So all these other cards are just extra copies of everything. We'll play one more. I guess this is Paleo. A bit of a weird opening, but actually it's... You know, if my opponent puts up a big end board, then it's kind of rough. But I'm going to see what he has. Another McPolar. So lots of doubles here. But Unicorn hopefully is going to trigger out something. Even if he goes for Ash there, at least I get to banish something from his graveyard. He's going to banish this, but, like, I don't know. If I end up getting Birth, then that's kind of bad for him, right? McPolar can go ahead. He's going to go for Ice Dragon's Prison, but he chains it wrong. I think it would have to be on Resolution. I don't know. I don't think that's how it works. So is it with a different name, I wonder? I gotta pause this. Special summon it, then you can banish. They have the same type. I think he just chained it wrong. So McPolar is gonna stay out here. I can pop a card. I'm gonna start my resource loop. And then I can go for Polari. And then Polari can banish. I could bring this back. I can go into the big 3, search a card, or, you know, add one of my banish back, excuse me. And then, yeah, now he has no cards. And I'm going to be able to pop whatever card it is during his turn, right? I can search, you know, Megapolar. And he scoops. So that is a long look at Ursarctics. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. I think that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.